Hi. So I thought it was really important to come on and tell you my story. And ultimately, honestly, I've written this out a couple times, but while showering today, I thought there are so many different parts of me and so many different parts of my life that have made me who I am. And ultimately, what I realized in the moment was that my story is whatever I really choose to focus on. There are lots of components to what has made me me. And what I've said ultimately my entire life is that my life has been a process of deduction. So I have moved, or I've lived, or I've been in an experience, and then I would move away from that. We grew up, and my family used to fight a lot growing up, and I would tell my parents, I would literally say, like, this is, you're teaching me what not to do. And as a petulant little kid, I've taken that a little bit into an adulthood by saying, like, this experience has taught me what I don't like, or the people that I don't want to be around, or the job that I don't want to have, or the life that I don't want to live. And I move in a direction kind of away from that. And it's not necessarily like towards positivity, towards something else, but it's carving out what doesn't fit me and the life that I want to live. So I grew up in outside Philadelphia in an area called Norristown, Pennsylvania, and it was a pretty low socioeconomic area. I was raised Jewish, and we were the only Jews on the block. And the only reason I actually learned that ultimately was because we were the only ones without Christmas lights. And uh, I went to Hebrew school in a totally separate part of Pennsylvania, and I had family like 40 minutes away in different directions. And my grandmothers were like the matriarch of their family, and I spent different types of time with each. One always taught me that there is a lesson in everything. And it took me a long time to realize that lesson. The other showed me a certain stoicism that I've never really been able to place, or that I've never really seen like replicated. There was this like quiet strength about my mother's mother, where she persevered and she worked incredibly hard. And my mother was the same. My mother moved pretty constantly from job to job, after being laid off at various different positions. And I had this understanding without even understanding of hard work. So I started working at a young age, and that was also due to economic status of my family. I learned that if I wanted to do things, I needed to support that financially myself. And I also, due to a lot of family fights, I spent as much time out of the house as I could. I was always the hardest working person I knew. And when people were going to school and then going to sports and then going home and doing homework, I was doing those things and also going to a job, starting at a young age as a young teenager, like 13. And I bought my first car when the moment I could legally drive, and I started bartending before I could legally bartend under the table. I put myself through a bartending school before I was legally able to even graduate and get the certificate. I had to show back up on my 18th birthday to get my legal bartending certificate, and then I could legally start bartending. And I picked up 3 jobs that summer. The moment I was able to say, like, I'm legally a bartender, I went to college, and when all the students were going maybe from their work study job to their class, I was going from my work study job to my class, maybe to my bartending job, and then to play rugby in the morning. And I've always had 1,000 things going on. I grew up as an athlete. I have an identical twin sister, and my parents have openly admitted that they just they felt as though if my sister and I were together, that we would keep each other alive and out of jail. And to that end, they just kind of forgot to include us in communication. So as an adult, I had to learn how to appropriately communicate in relationships, and I had to learn how to take care of myself because I wasn't there. There weren't overt lessons on how to keep myself healthy. The one thing that my parents always had was relatively good food in the house. They always focused on that, but that was kind of where the buck stopped when it came to like supervision and help on maintaining health and protecting my body. So coming into adulthood, I had to learn how to do all that. I had to learn that setting up a doctor's appointment and a dentist appointment, getting an annual check was something that people even did because it wasn't a part of growing up all that much. We went if we were really sick, or if we had a really bad toothache, like a couple times, but there just wasn't frequent care like that. And it's not to a fault of my parents. I think there were just different types of priorities to manage the economics of my family. So flash forward to through college, I've always moved full speed in the direction of things that I wanted to do. I and that doesn't mean that I've known what I wanted to do because things change all the time. But what I've allowed is the deduction. I have envisioned what it is that I want to do right now, and then I move full speed. And if I get, sometimes I will get literally slapped in the face with an opportunity, and I've just been open enough to see it. Sometimes it hits me a couple times. It has to hit me a couple times, but otherwise, from college, I went on and I moved down to DC. I thought I wanted to work in federal investigation. So I moved down to DC and I specifically started working in bars in areas where I would be able to gain some contacts within the federal system. Washington, DC is a really transient space, all the while studying for federal investigations, like entry exams and things like that. And then I got a job out in West Virginia as a police officer, and I worked as a sexual assault investigator. And then also I was soon invited after starting my police career to try out for the SWAT team, and I became the first female member of the Jefferson County SWAT team, where I worked for 4 years. And I loved aspects of those jobs and also didn't. So once I realized that I was moving in the direction of something else, I did leave. And all the while I actually was working in health and wellness for a long time, kind of on the side. I've always had like a full-time and then side hustles. And what I realized was that someone asked me, like, Sharon, how do you go to bed at 2:30 in the morning and then wake up at 5:30 to coach? I was coaching CrossFit at the time. And I said, honestly, getting up at 5:30 to coach you and be in this positive environment is what's keeping me from shooting someone when I go back home and put on a vest and go back out into the world. And I don't mean to make that sound morbid, but I realized that I was kind of living opposing lives, and that the positivity which I felt in coaching people and working with people and meeting people where they were at and learning about their bodies and the way that humans and our minds interact with our space and wellness, that fueled me to go out and do a job that was only taking from me and wasn't a positive experience for me, despite the positivity around the SWAT team that I was on. It was just a very separate assignment. And I continued to work in health and wellness, and I went back to get my master's degree because I felt like in order to do the things that I wanted to do, I had to learn more. And I'm a little bit insatiable when it comes to wanting to learn. So I went back and I got my master's degree. And through my master's degree, I found Paralympic sport. And through Paralympic sport, I started working with the USA wheelchair rugby team and later the USA Paralympic fencing team. And I get to still work with them today. It is 2021 and I've been in the Paralympic movement for 4 years now, and I love the Paralympic movement. Getting to work with all types of bodies and people, realizing that a body is a body and a human is a human, and we are all doing our best to be our best, regardless of what level we are attempting to perform at, that there are some basic necessities of taking care of our body. And I have the fortunate opportunity to deliver some of those services to some of the best athletes in the world. But as a coach, for me, the world of difference is getting to work with people for the very first time that are finding wellness and finding fitness for the first time, or trying to reestablish a new relationship with themselves. Like, those are my people. Athletes are boring. They're great, but they're boring. My story is what I've chosen to focus on. I could focus on childhood trauma. I could focus on being uprooted out of our home and locked out. I could focus on abuse. I could focus on late nights and early mornings of making it work. I could focus on family fights. I could focus on working since I was 12. I could focus on traveling abroad and getting the chance to study abroad. I could focus on the massive student loan debt that I have still and will pay off early. I could focus on my amazing wife and my 2 dogs. I could focus on our path, our unlikely and odd path to live here in Colorado much earlier than we thought we'd be able to. I could focus on my twin sister and our relationship and how it has evolved over the years, and how my understanding of who she is as a person has never been more real and honest than it is today, because I see her for who she is and not who she is as a reflection of me. So my story is what I have chosen, or what I choose to focus on any given day. But today, what I choose to focus on is who I am and where I want to go and who I want to be and what do I need to do today to become her in the future. My story is one of learning that I was capable of having a happy cry in 2010 for the very first time and not knowing what to do with it. My story is of learning that my history of injuries is directly correlated with violence that I experienced growing up. My understanding and my story is of many concussions and learning what self-care means to me, which can be often needing to step away and giving myself the grace to do so without guilt or negative self-talk. My story is one of learning that no one is eavesdropping in more on me and what I tell myself about my story than me.